I'm Amy Goodman. As we host a debate on the controversy over the cartoons depicting Prophet Muhammad and the worldwide protests, we're joined in the Yale studio in New Haven, Connecticut by Irshad Manji. She is author of the book, The Trouble with Islam Today, A Muslim's Call for Reform in Her Faith, currently based at Yale as a visiting fellow with the International Security Studies Program. And on the phone with us from California is AbuKhalil, professor of political science at California State University Stanislaus, author of several books. His latest is The Battle for Saudi Arabia, Royalty, Fundamentalism, and Global Power. He also runs a popular blog called the Angry Arab News Service. And we welcome you both to Democracy Now! AbuKhalil, can you respond to these worldwide protests against the publication of these cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad?
Well, I would try to explain some of the orientations of Muslim Arab angers about the cartoons. Before I do so, I would like to say right at the outset where I stand. First, I am very much in favor, and I relish the opportunity to mock every and other religion. What I think is very bothersome to many Arabs and Muslims is exactly what the other guest does, which is selective condemnation and mocking of one religion over others. I mean, I think if you mock a religion that is consistent, free-thinking, in support for the Enlightenment as well as secularism, but what comes out of many in the West is selective secularism, the notion that you can mock one religion, but all others have to be treated with reverence and sacredness. And this is why this entire defense in the name of freedom of speech doesn't sell very much in the Arab world. People very much know that offenses against Muslims and Arabs are often treated as defensible because they are in the name of freedom of speech. And the Philadelphia Inquirer, which among many other Western publications circulated and reprinted those cartoons, again in the name of freedom of speech. And we all know that they wouldn't dare do so if these were offensive to Jews, for example. I mean, this entire debate about newsworthiness of those cartoons also is not very convincing. I mean, David Irving is a grotesque Nazi, white supremacist, so-called historian in England, was in trial. And I wouldn't think that the Philadelphia Inquirer would ever dare reprint some of his ugly, hateful writings about the Second World era. I mean, this shows exactly the kind of hypocrisy that is striking many in the Arab Muslim world. The second thing I want to say is, I mean...
Let me get Irshad Manji to respond, and then you can respond to her.
Well, thank you very much, Amy. I am frankly shocked that your other guest would already attack me for being quote-unquote selective. Certainly, I have written a book called The Trouble with Islam Today, but as I have pointed out time and again, that doesn't mean there are that the other religions are problem-free. It's just that there are no shortage of books in the libraries about the problem with Christianity, no dearth of books about the trouble within Judaism. It seems to me that we Muslims have a lot of catching up to do in the dissent department, and I think that a program like this very much appreciates the need for dissent of all belief systems. And speaking of dissent, you know, I find it interesting that your other guest suggests or actually emphasizes that there is a targeting of Islam, but that no other religion, you know, can be mocked. That how then does he explain the routinely and viciously anti-Semitic programming that comes out of the Arab world? And I would remind him that we Muslims never protest that kind of atrocity. So how do we have integrity, demanding to the rest of the world that they completely respect our religion when we ourselves have trouble respecting other faiths?
AbuKhalil.
Well, I mean, that's very easy to respond to. I mean, first of all, I am aware of the pontification of the other guest on Fox News, among other outlets that relish the opportunity to have somebody like her.
I'll let CNN know.
One second. This is not Fox O'Reilly show. This is Amy Goodman. Let me speak. Who are, you know, very much in favor of having people who are very much uniquely focused only on Islam. I mean, as it happens, the other guest writes on Islam without being trained or knowledgeable about it. If she would know that there are many brave souls, free thinkers in the history of Islam who spoke out, and some of them died because they went against conventional wisdom. And they were braver against Islam, the religion. Many of them mocked Muhammad, many of them mocked the Quran, and some of them lived with their heads on their shoulder, but she is totally ignorant about that because that's not her specialty. I mean, her specialty is polemics against Islam, and that's something very much appreciated in the United States. Yes, it is true, there are many media in the Arab world that have published grotesque anti-Semitic depictions and images. But these are the responsibility of the governments, and many of them are allies of the United States. And she is also, again, ignorant. Perhaps she doesn't know any Persian or Arabic to know that there's a big debate and there's a lot of condemnation about anti-Semitic writings that come out in some of those publications. But the issue here also is about something else. I mean, there is a notion in the West here that, the issue is about the fact that Muslims ban depictions of the Prophet. I mean, which is true, even though in the history of Islamic art, if your guest knows anything about it, there are like tons of, illustrations in Persia, among other places, where Muhammad was, in fact, in very clear details depicted by Muslims at the time. For many today in the Arab world, and I mean, as far as the ranking of outrages, this is not something that outrages me. But you cannot, in the name of freedom of speech, deny the Muslims and Arabs the right to be outraged about something that offends them. But that's the whole issue, that we believe that offenses to Muslims should be defended as something that is in the name of freedom of speech. And there are many outlets today that are reprinting those same cartoons that are offensive to Muslims in the name of freedom of speech, while people do not treat offensive to other religions in the same manner. And it seems to me, if you insist on people having the right to depict in any way they want all prophets, as I do. I mean, I would love to have mocking of all religions, but people don't do that. People are very selective in what religion can be mocked and ridiculed by comedians and by cartoonists in many Western countries.
Irshad Manji, your response.
It seems to me that our friend here believes that the more angry you are, the more right you are. Boy, I certainly don't make that kind of an equation. And as far as, reprinting and rebroadcasting these cartoons, I find it interesting that my favorite propaganda platform, according to your guest, Fox News, won't even go there. They won't rebroadcast these cartoons, and yet last night they were only too happy to trot out the viciously anti-Jewish cartoons that routinely appear in the Arab world. And you know why they believe they could get away with that? Because the Jews are not going to storm their offices. The Jews are not going to issue death threats against the journalists who are behind these cartoons. The Jews are not going to threaten the lives of people who carry American passports. Whereas we Muslims, we do, have trouble containing our own violence. And anybody who denies that is clearly living in the world of theory, not in the world of reality.
Asad AbuKhalil, would you say this is an overreaction, what is happening?
I mean, first of all, it's not up to me to decide. I have my own sensibilities, and for me, as a secular atheist, I would love to have people who mock and ridicule all religions together. But it is the inconsistency that's striking as well as the hypocrisy. She happens to mention the network where she is always pontificating about the issues of Islam, even though she's not trained in the subject whatsoever, is that Fox News have routinely talked about how they are offensive to Christianity because people don't say Merry Christmas during the season. We cannot in any way deny that there are sensibilities of Jews and Christians right here in this country, and that's something that is very controversial. You cannot deny that. And what she talks about, routine anti-Semitism, that is also a generalization about an entire region and about millions of people in the world. As I said, she is totally unaware about the many Muslims and Arabs who routinely speak out against anti-Semitism in the Arabic press, and these are governments that control the press, so we cannot say it's a reflection of society in general.
Where are the protests, my friend?
In general,
where are the protests? Where are the ordinary people
you don't know about
pouring into the streets?
They don't have to appear on O'Reilly for you to know about them. They write them in Arabic.
You know what? You can invoke Fox News all you want, all right, in order to try to detract from the real issue here, but I challenge you to tell me, where are the ordinary Muslims in the Islamic world pouring into the streets to demonstrate against Saudi Arabia's policy to prevent Jews and Christians from stepping on the soil of Mecca merely because they are Jews and Christians? Tell me, where are those protests? Answer.
Well, if you read Arabic, which you don't, and maybe you want to learn it, you would realize that many writers and intellectuals have written about these issues, have condemned anti-Semitic writings wherever they occur. If they do not appear in certain demonstrations, because these governments do not allow the demonstrations.
Where are the demonstrations?
One second, let me finish. And there's another element here, Amy, in the story, which I think, I've written about it on my blog, which I think is important. I totally believe that these demonstrations have been instigated and have been set off by the Arab governments and Muslim governments themselves. These are corrupt, bankrupt governments that are very much aware of the anger of their people about Israel and about U.S. foreign policy in the regions and about wars. And I wish people are much more angry about occupation and about oppression and poverty, as well about Israeli brutality against the Palestinians, which your other guests would not dare talk about, of course, because O'Reilly wouldn't invite her on that show to speak about that.